Hello, my name is Michael Reedy, and I am the conductor for the University of South Florida's production of Virgil Thomson's The Mother of Us All, being performed March 22nd and 23rd at 7:30 p.m. at the concert hall. Recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with two of our artists, Susan B. Anthony, who is being performed by Courtney Sousa, and Anne, her confidant, being performed by Courtney Elvira. Now, this interview was not only about rhythm and style, but how the two women are going to be creating their characters as artists. I hope you enjoy, and we look forward to seeing you there. So, Susan.
Well, the way that I am playing her is very straight, but because I've read a lot of her quotes, she's very defiant.
Right.
So there's a lot of defiance, and the way that I interact with the VIP is very much, I try to reflect that defiance. Her and I feel like she's my confidant. You know, we were talking about earlier in staging, me writing speeches and her proofreading them,
Right.
She doesn't, in her letters to people, she's close to people, but she's separated because they're mothers and their wives, and she's never known that. And
Right.
she, to a certain extent, doesn't approve of that. There's one letter I read where, I believe it was Elizabeth, she was having so many children, and she just told her, stop, tell your husband to stop. So there's a certain level of disconnect there where she is not able to understand that part of those women's lives because she's never lived it and she never will.
Right.
So, I mean, it's kind of like the Countess in my mind, where it's very like, there's a regalness there, but there's also that defiance, that she's not afraid to get in the mud a little bit.
Now, with defiance and, being the Iron Woman,
Yeah.
not to take away from Margaret Thatcher, but definitely, to be the Iron Woman, I think that I definitely agree that she's stern, and that I think that when she's in public, whatever comes out of her mouth, she is putting in a defiant way.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about the relationship between the two of you when you're home, alone.
Yeah.
'Cause I
and
think
the dream
that
sequence too. Is
dream
very
definitely.
interesting.
See, I'm not in that.
Yeah, but
But-
that's a time where she's that's not her public face. And I
Right.
feel like she doesn't show you her public face either.
And I think that's so interesting, even because, I try to think of this in a modern sense, because we still, we're dealing with, in 2012, 13, I forget it's 2000, that, women, I mean, it's still in the news that you're not getting paid the same amount as men. I mean, how offensive is that? Or, even from a civil rights perspective, she's asking the Negro man,
Yeah.
are you going to vote if she can? And he's like, well, yeah, it's for me. It's the same thing of thinking of, gay civil rights.
There's a parallel to marriage rights for sure.
Absolutely. And so I think what's really interesting is to even think of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I think of she has that front face, and then you want to know every human being has to let down their hair. And I think that we need to find the spots in the music that you can definitely do that. And then my question for Anne, you can say a little bit about what you think your character is, but I want to know, where do you think your place is with her in regards to your opinion?
I think Anne is a little bit, I don't want to say aggressive, but I think she's more pointed. She's not as careful as I think Susan B. tries to be.
Okay.
She blatantly states, and one of my phrases in here is that she's like, I will never marry. I think she's very much against it. I don't think she's pointed in the direction of female conformity, especially during that time. I think she's beyond.
So they have that bond.
Right.
Yeah,
Where
I
neither
just
of them
think
will be married.
I feel Susan B. has more to.
Yeah.
How is this? I think Susan B., like you said, has more to fight for and more to stand for.
Yeah.
And I think Anne is a great support for that. And it shows in the music because Anne is always sort of repeating what Susan B. says, or is always saying something, either prepping for what a statement she's going to say, or explaining or exaggerating on something she's already said. And it sort of pieces Susan's ideas together. So I think she's definitely a huge support system. I also think she, again, says things, she's not as careful.
Right, and I think that that's great that you brought up that Susan B. kind of has more to fight for, but I think she has more to fall on.
Yeah.
So you think, if you say something wrong, you can go 10 steps back with
Yeah.
women's rights. Unlike Anne can say something to
Yeah.
you to let it, I always think of you have your own filter, and then you are kind of the spoken word of another woman
Yeah.
to confirm her ideas. But, right from the beginning, to get into some text, yes, I was, and then you say, you mean you are. But are you saying, how are you saying you mean you are?
Yeah.
I think she is, meaning she's in the present, you very much are right now as a figure for women's rights right now.
But I guess my question is, even though, so you're at Fortissimo, and it's
Mhm.
yes, I was, but is that declamatory, or is that, that's kind of saying this is what I was before?
That's funny because I always think of it as the middle of a conversation. I guess I never really thought of it like that. To me, it was always just she's, in the notes it says she's scrapbooking, but to me it always just seems like they're talking about her last rally or her last speaking engagement,
Right.
and they're mid-argument. That's how I've always viewed it. But that's interesting
Because I think of it, it's so
start.
funny I think of, when, which we'll get into the question, I guess we can streamline it, it'll go quicker, is what are your thoughts on the kind of allegations that they are romantic? It's never been proved.
Well, we actually talked about that a bit. I think my personal thought is that if she was or wasn't, it's not necessarily important because I think that she made herself asexual for her cause. I think that it's definitely a possibility, but as I was saying, maybe I said this a little awkwardly the first time we talked about it in class, how would she know to do that? There wasn't a lot of Sappho literature. I mean, there wasn't the internet. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, she could have had those feelings, but even women who got married, they weren't told what to expect or even what to do until the night before. And what they were told was, your husband knows what to do. Just sit there, and that'll be fine,
Well,
So-
I think, one of the interesting things that it kind of goes into, not even from a physical perspective, but it's oftentimes that it says that, and this you can correct me because I'm only speaking of what I've heard, is that women become emotionally invested before they become physically invested,
Mhm.
when oftentimes men are the complete opposite.
I think it depends on the person.
Well, especially this day and age.
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking of this time, late 1800s, you may be completely in love
Yeah.
with Anne and one another for what you do and what you stand
Yeah.
for. That could be a best friend love, and it doesn't have to be fulfilled physically. They don't have to be.
I think there's a definite companionship because she, like I said, you are not married. You and I have that bond where we're kind of, there is the women that we're representing, they're sequestered in that they're married. They don't have the flexibility of movement that we do. Married, she would have never been able to do these speaking engagements. It's unlikely that she would have had a husband who allowed her to speak publicly, especially since this was such a divisive issue.
Right.
And we both don't have that attachment. We are, the maiden aunts, as it were. So we're in this, separate category within ourselves. So I think there's a wonderful relationship there where they're able to come from the same area. They haven't experienced the same things as these other women, but we're also not detached.
Right. I mean,
From
not
each
completely.
other.
I still
Yeah.
think they experience some of the things that they do.
Well,
I think it's the
when-
pressure to fit them.
Oh, for sure. Well, Susan B. Anthony, there were times when she was considering engagement. I mean, she was courted,
Right.
quite often in her youth. So.
Well, let's jump to page 95. 95, I was reviewing before coming here this morning, and I was listening to this part, and it made me think of, I want to know what you believe they're talking about. So, Susan B. says, I am but one, all one and all, blah, blah, blah. I will never be married to anyone. And you say, but I have been married to what you have been to, that one. And then Susan B., you say, no. And then you declaim it one more time. You may be married to the past one, the one that is not the present one. What is the present and past one? Because this very easily could be, no, you may be married to the past one, meaning you may have been married to, I don't know if it's to me, I don't know if it's, you may be to the idea of marriage with a man, but no, we could never be married. I want to know what the present one is, because it says at 141, rehearsal 141, no one can be married to the present one. Does that mean that I am the present one and the past one is who you were engaged to before?
I don't know. I was taking this as being like the idea of woman.
Yeah.
the women before.
Yeah. That's how I kind of thought of it too.
But, right, well, that's
how
interesting.
women have progressed.
Yeah.
You can't be married to the past female idea because she's already, by this movement
Mm-hmm.
of both Susan and her companion Anne, they've transformed this idea of how a woman should be and what a woman is now and what she will become. And you can't be married to the old idea anymore. That's how I took it.
No, and then, I mean, that's
Interesting.
the thing is that we have so much play, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you know, I think that it's going to be very interesting how you two interact with one another
Yeah.
on stage, because really, if anybody knows anything about the story, and if anybody even wants to infer
Yeah.
that the two were together, I think that there needs to be a stronger bond between the two of you on stage than with anything else.
Oh, I agree. And I think that they can read into that what they want to read into it, but I definitely think that there's a companionship, and whether that was intimate or not, or physically, that's for the audience to decide.
Right.
I agree with you.
But I mean, I just want to go through the text. We'll jump back. Don't mean to make you jump all over the place. But just as you said, yes, I was. So you believe it's in the middle.
Yeah, I always just kind of pictured that as in the middle of the argument. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'm open to other ideas. That's very interesting.
No, I mean, I like it because
Yeah.
I think of the banter between two spouse.
Yeah.
That is,
And ultimately,
you're entertaining her, but at the same time, you're still reading the newspaper. So I feel like you are pushing her forward, but it's so off the cuff. It's like you're saying yes, I was, and you're reading something, and you go, you mean you are,
It's challenging.
and you go back and you know.
Yeah.
So I would just maybe we'll talk it without the narration.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know how fast we can do that. I had it printed, but
Do you
I
want
didn't
to do it
bring
in rhythm, or do you want to do it like it was conversation? To get
We
that
can do both.
dynamic?
Let's do both. I would love to do it in rhythm because that's,
Okay.
I think, better sometimes.
Well, let's do it in text first,
Okay, yeah.
and then we'll do from text to rhythm.
Yes, I was.
You mean you are?
No. No. When this you see, remember me.
I do.
And then,
Da, 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 da.
Who is educated?
I'm not tired.
No, not.
No, I am not.
La la la.
You know, that's great. Up to that point, my question is, when they said after a while there was education, who is educated? I want to know, are you going to put emphasis on who or is? Because it changes the question if you go, who is educated and who is educated? Text-wise, you're given a full...
I think I want to emphasize who.
Yeah.
Because, it's what's happening now is we're trying to educate men and
Correct.
people in general about our cause. So.
Now let me ask you a question. Do you think that while they're narrating and they're off in the corner, do you think that we are still speaking to each other? Do you think that these are jumps in the conversation, or do you feel like it's straight through?
I don't know how it's been staged.
Well, it hasn't been staged.
The
I'm
beginning.
just curious.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's hard,
I'm just curious from just reading it.
I think that it's when you say who is educated, it's a continuance, but
Yeah.
I believe that it's the narrators are taking like topics from your
Yeah.
argument.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt it was too. That they were
It's
like
like
highlighting the
yeah.
most important, but we're still having like a full conversation.
So I think that no matter what, people are going to kind of be going back and forth.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's planning on doing spotlight kind of deal. That would be
Sure.
far too complicated from a
No,
staging
I
perspective.
doubt we'll do that. But we're staging this on Sunday. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be there. He said it's not going to be
Perfect.
anything about music, so I'm not going to be conducting. But
Yeah, but it'll be interesting for you to see it.
yeah, we'll continue. But it's good. I think also, just for musical confirmation of your idea of who is actually the longest rhythmic
yeah.
note. Which is also great because it's ending in a
It's
vowel.
nice that he sort of gives it to Virgil Thomson, sort of gives it to you too, which is the emphasis.
Okay, we'll skip past. Now, what is this I am not tired? Do you believe is in reference to today or is in reference to the fight?
I think it's a reference to the fight. She began to follow. She began to follow herself.
Yeah,
I think that's just a reiteration that she is fully committed to the cause and she believes, because I would imagine that all civil rights heroes in the beginning have experienced some doubt. Who am I to do this? Who am I to change this?
Right.
I think everything in here though is symbolic and can be
Yeah.
like translated to the macrocosm of the entire female like cause is pretty much what's going on. But I think it's also momentary too, but it can be easily translated.
Yeah, I mean, you think of Gertrude Stein, who's writing this text
Yeah.
in 1947, clearly far before that, this is just when
Yes.
the production actually happened. As a woman writing the text for an opera,
Well, and I also feel like Gertrude Stein had her own agenda. I don't think it was that sinister, but I definitely think that you view history in a way that will mean the most to you.
I believe that for people to believe that they're not political, it's naive.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the arts, and I had this big conversation with a friend of mine who was Radomez at Opera Tampa, and he actually called me yesterday and we were talking, and because I kind of got into a negative funk over
Yeah.
Christmas break, because I wasn't making music. I was sitting at home,
Yeah.
not working, not studying, not practicing, kind of just going, why am I doing music?
Yeah.
And I don't want to deal with the political bullshit. I just want to make
Yeah.
music. I want to be a hippie, which is totally not my personality if you know me at all. So it's so interesting to believe the idea that you can do anything, whether it be art or anything, without the politics in play. So for Gertrude Stein to not believe, as a woman who is fronting an opera with someone who you go into a new commission like
She was
this.
also a gay woman.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of, information at play for her.
Absolutely.
And how
if-
wonderful to have your martyr, have this identifying characteristic with you that is not accepted in the 40s. Even now people struggle,
Oh, yeah.
the public perception is terrible right now, so.
Oh yeah.
But he was doing worse in the 40s, so.
So let's go back. We're gonna keep going, but we're gonna do it in rhythm now. Although I don't think we really have an issue with the rhythm here, but it'll come its way. Bump, 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 bump.
Yes, I was.
Susan
You mean you are.
said Anne.
No,
Said Susan.
no. When this you see, remember me.
Said Susan B.
I do.
Da, 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 dee, dee, dee.
Who is educated?
Said Anne. Susan began to follow. She began to follow herself.
I am not tired.
You see, that's
Oh,
the same
there.
thing. Good, that's good. Susan began to follow. She began to follow herself.
I am-
For one.
I am not tired. I
Yeah.
do that every single time.
I know, because you want it to be. And that's okay, because what's also happening is I'm singing Gertrude's and you're not hearing Virgil's, which is that echo.
Oh,
So it's Susan began to follow, she began to follow herself.
I am not tired.
Said Susan,
No, not.
said Anne.
No, I am not.
This was the beginning. Da 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 bum 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 bum. And that was
Wow.
Susan B.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I would say, if you can with your score, this is, I wish I had more time with everybody, but if you're worried about text, don't look at the text of the other people to follow.
Yeah,
Look at the piano, because if you ever get lost,
yeah.
no person is going to help you except for Jack and myself. And then
So true.
one looks a lot the same every measure,
Yeah.
So I can only do so much except
Yeah.
for going.
Giving
Yeah.
us the beat.
So let's start at the listesso. So it's bum ba ba bum 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 1 2 da 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 dee da bum ba da da dee da da bum 1 2 3.
Here I am here.
Well,
Do not let it trouble you.
Da da dee da. Bum ba time she was there. She was polite. She often thought about politeness.
is it?
Said Anne.
Yes.
Da da Dot, 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 dot.
Yes, I think so. That is to say, politeness is agreeable. That is to say, it could be. If everybody were polite. But when it is only me,
Me. Okay, so one of the great things that I love that he does is, obviously this is not, Puccini's opera.
No.
We're not having a very long crescendo, but he definitely builds to the climax of phrases, not necessarily the entire melodic portion. So I definitely take into effect that yes, you said, is it a mezzo piano?
Okay.
And it says mezzo piano. So what does that mean emotionally when we have softer dynamics? That's a fun question, because, is softer just mean
More intimate.
softer? Because you say, is it? So is this the first time that you're asking a question?
Yeah.
No.
We're asking questions, but most of the time you're saying you are, you're boom boom, you're finishing her sentences, and now
It's
you're
very
going,
direct.
is it? And then you say yes, but you say yes mezzo piano. So is that a declamatory yes, or is that a yes? Yes, I think so. That is to say, that is to say. This is a great way of thinking, because you go, yes, said Susan, bum ba 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 ba, yes, I think so. Yeah, so I think it's almost like I always think of Julie Andrews going, yes, I think so. As she would go in to start
Yeah.
dancing or walking away and touching something
Yeah.
while singing. It's a very great thing. So let's start right there and start at the is it. So ba da 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 da.
Is it?
Yes.
Ba 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 ba.
Yes, I think so. That is to say, politeness is agreeable. That is to say, it could be. If everybody were polite.
Yeah, and I think that I hate to use her as an idea, but how she would end phrases very enunciated.
Yes. No, I'm
Because
thinking
everybody were polite. And it's cute and proper, but you have to think she's got the bitch bun and she doesn't want anybody to see any skin. That's not gonna happen. So it's polite. It's almost making fun of women etiquette of always having to, while men can do whatever. Men can sprawl out, and it's yes, I think so. To be polite is agreeable. Agreeable on what terms? On terms of men, on society, on myself. I'll agree to be polite because I'm not going to get anywhere by being a bitch. Also, what's great is that you have this long crescendo that I believe that we shouldn't start the crescendo. Now, are you going to start crescendo on politeness, or are you going to start it on is? Because, see, we kind of have the crescendos written there.
Yeah, it's in a strange place, isn't it?
That is to say that politeness. I would probably start with is agreeable, only because of, if you look down at your accompaniment, their crescendo starts on ba bi da di da 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 bi ba da di bum bum. And that everybody, we cannot, I don't know if you're going to breathe. Do you breathe before if, ev? Da 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 di
Yeah,
da.
I do a bit.
Bum, just a little sniff.
Yeah.
I think that's good for timing, and then I would not start the decrescendo. So it's forte all the way to "were polite," and then it's the end of that phrase. And then of course it's "but when it is only me," mezzo forte. Because this is great, because now you're saying, I'm prim and proper, but when it's just me, and then you sing a high beat, it's like, it's great. Keep going. Bass drum, this is for bum, 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 and was reproachful.
Why do you not speak louder?
I speak as loudly as I can.
Bum,
I even speak louder.
bum,
I even speak louder than I can.
Do you really?
said Anne.
Yes, I really do.
Da, 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 da. Okay, That's good too. Now, I speak as loudly as I can. There's no crescendo written, but are you kind of doing block levels? Have you thought of it that way? Of go, I
No.
speak as loudly as I can. I even speak louder. I even speak louder than I can.
No, but that's okay.
You know, it's this
But
tiered system.
I doubt I'll start at forte if I'm going to do. I'll probably do
Yeah.
that, so.
I mean, that's fine. Why do you, because you're like, why do you not speak louder?
Mhm.
And then, you know, when you think, if someone's like, speak up or enunciate, you're like, I am fine. And then you'll go
I'll
into
do
it.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I speak as loudly as I can. I even speak louder. I even speak louder than I can. And you go, do you really? And then you say, yes, I really do. Because at this point, you're convincing yourself that you speak as loudly as you can. Gertrude Stein said, Susan B., it was dark, and as it was dark, it was necessary to speak louder or very softly. Very softly.
Dear me.
Are you doing the portamento there?
Yes.
Said Susan B.
If it was not so early, I would be sleepy.
I myself
Said Anne.
never like to look at a newspaper.
You are entirely right. Only I disagree with you.
Now
Yeah,
that
sorry.
let's talk about that statement. Yeah, we'll get that rhythm in a minute. But I agree with you, except I call you on your bullshit. Now, what is it about the newspaper? Is it I never liked the gossip of the newspaper? I never liked the news. I never liked listening to men. What is it? Because we go into men are so conservative.
I always thought that she was talking about, I mean, there must have been editorials on Susan B. that were very rude.
Right.
In the movement in general, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's how I kind of always thought about it.
So that's my question for you because again, you're at piano.
Yeah.
So I myself never liked newspaper. And then there's a crescendo, and then only I disagree with you. We're as the two of us, you know, this week we're
Yeah.
definitely going to have to listen to each other. And I would, with these kinds of things where it's piano, piano, mezzo forte, mezzo forte, and it's building together. That's that dynamic between each other. That dynamic both from an emotional perspective, but also from the idea that we play off of one another. And so we'll listen dynamically to make sure that we're both right on, trying to match as great as possible.